Welcome to Love, Light, and With the Shits. This podcast is dedicated to helping women of color heal trauma, live authentically, and create their dream lives. I'm your host, Alyssa. We'll talk about self-love, spiritual journeys, relationships, manifesting, and so much more. So if you're looking to start on a journey towards living your best life, you've made it to the right place. Hello, welcome back to Love, Light, and With the Shits. So glad that you're back with me. If you're new, welcome. Got us a wonderful episode today that I think that a lot of women can definitely resonate with. We're going to be talking about how trauma and stress affects women's health, specifically Black women's health. So last episode, I told y'all that we were going to talk about like the connection between trauma and how holding on to emotions can cause illness and disease in our bodies. So we're going to discuss a very common condition today, fibroids, and basically just discuss like why they always say fibroids are so much more common in Black women than in white women. So we're going to discuss that today. And I just want to say, first of all, disclaimer, I am a medical professional, but I am not a doctor, a nurse practitioner, or a physician's assistant. This episode is not giving you any medical advice. If you have any medical issues, please go see your practitioner of choice. With this episode, I'm just sharing what I went through, choices that I made, and some research and information that I came across that helped me make decisions regarding my health. So please always get, 1, 2, 3 opinions, and also trust yourself and your body. All right. So now that we got that out the way, I feel like in school, in different articles and such, they always tell us that Black people, when it comes to certain conditions, whether it's high blood pressure, stroke, diabetes, whatever, they always tell us that it's genetic, it's socioeconomic, it's the diet, it's our environment, it's because we're poor, because we're obese. They always give us those same exact reasons of why diseases and illnesses are so much more aggressive in our community. And while that can be true to a degree, when I went through nursing school, like I just never could accept that. Like I felt like to me it was kind of like a cop-out in a way. Like you can't give me any like real scientific facts about why this is occurring, except for it's the diet that we eat and we're fat and we don't go to the doctor, which I said in some cases, that is true, but that cannot be a catch-all for why diseases present differently in us. So this subject really touches me because I actually was diagnosed with fibroids in 2020. So that being diagnosed is what triggered me into doing more research about what was going on inside of my body. So for this episode, I'm going to be referencing a book called Women's Bodies, Women's Wisdom, Creating Physical and Emotional Health and Healing. And this was written by Dr. Christiane Northrup. She is actually an OBGYN, but she also practices spirituality. So she approaches her patients with a different approach. If I could find an OBGYN who actually addressed my spiritual and energetic issues along with the physical symptoms, that would be like a dream come true. But since I do not have one like that around me, I definitely have this book. It was recommended to me by Natalie Susie, my coach that I speak to every week. She told me about this when I was telling her about my issue with my fibroids and whatnot. And this book definitely is basically like a reference. Like if you look at certain issues when you're in your body, it talks about reproductive issues, infertility, breast cancer, being overweight. Like the book is so wonderful because it gives you spiritual reasons why certain things may be going on with you. So it really encourages you to look past the surface physical things. Let's get to the meat of it and see what is actually causing, like what is your body trying to communicate with you that you need to change so that it is not in distress or dis-ease. anymore. So I love it. I love it. I love it. So speaking on fibroids, fibroids are 3 to 9 times more common in Black women than white women. So like I said, modern science, Western medicine will tell you it's because obesity, our diet, genetics, we're poor, more poor than white people. And also, one of the biggest reasons that I heard for fibroids was the chemical relaxers, hair relaxers. And so, like I said, like just listening to that, it just didn't make any sense to me, because when you think about it, white women also get chemical treatments to their hair done very regularly. So that doesn't make any sense to me. So why isn't the incidence of fibroids almost the same if they're basically going to get the same chemicals put in their hair? So like I said, that on top of me being diagnosed with fibroids is really what pushed me into researching and finding answers that sat, better with me. So I was diagnosed with 3 small fibroids January of 2020. The year prior to that, I was experiencing heavier than normal periods for me, painful periods, which I never had. My periods were always regular. They were the same length of time every time, clockwork, no issues. So that was something new. So finally I went to the doctor. I explained to her what was going on during my annual exam. We got an ultrasound, and that's where they found out that I had the fibroids. So I had some symptoms, like I said, very heavy bleeding. I was anemic, not dangerously anemic, but I was anemic to the point that I was tired. I didn't have a lot of energy. I just didn't feel good. So I spoke with my OBGYN, and after I had the definitive diagnosis from an ultrasound, we actually went through the different options. I could get on hormonal birth control, which was a no, because I've not been on birth control for years, ever since basically my youngest son was born. Like I'll take that back. I've been off of birth control since 2016 through 2017. I had the IUD that did not work for me. So I ended up getting it taken out, and I had so many side effects that I just decided I wasn't going to be on any birth control anymore. So I've been off of birth control. So I did not want to get on any birth control pills. I was given the option of Llwts, which is a medication that you take multiple times a day while you're on your period, and it's supposed to make your period a whole lot lighter. So I was like, all right, well, I'll try that. Well, I tried that. It made my period a whole lot lighter, but it made it last forever. Like I was spotting for damn near 2 weeks. So I stopped those on my own. That was a no-go. So once I, went back, I let my OBGYN know that my periods were getting heavier. I was bleeding through my clothes. I was hurting so bad to the point that if my period if it was day 1 and I had to work, I was in so much pain that I would, contemplate calling off of work because it was so bad. So as the symptoms were, getting worse, we talked about it, and she told me about either getting a uterine ablation or a hysterectomy. Now, hysterectomy was pretty much off the table for me anyway, because I'm like, that's major surgery, major recovery, a lot of risk involved. I'm too young for that. I'm good. So I chose the ablation. Eventually, I just had the ablation done in April of this year. So once we went through all these options, and before I even chose, what course of treatment that I was going to take, I started doing my research. And so in one of my calls with Natalie, I was telling her, what I had going on, and I was going to the doctor, and she told me about this book. And so I was like, oh my God. So I ordered it immediately, and I was amazed. Once I opened it up, and it has a section that's on the uterus and fibroids and endometriosis. So it was so interesting, the things that I learned. And I think off the top that we feel like once women have gotten to a certain age, or if women don't want any more children, that the uterus is useless. Is there for no reason. If you don't want to have babies, basically, why do you have a uterus? And so I know that I used to joke around before, like, because my kids are older now. The youngest is 9, the oldest is 11. So I'm like, I don't want no more kids. So you take it. If you want to take my you, go ahead and take it. That's one less thing for me to worry about. But after I started to think about it, even more, I'm like, that's removing a piece of me. And if I'm not having super severe symptoms, like, why do I want to go through all that and have it removed and risk going into menopause early and having these hormonal issues? So I took that off the table for myself. So I'm like, no, that's not really an option for me. So the bad thing, though, is that there are a lot of doctors who feel the same way about women's uterus because they feel like if you're no longer in childbearing age or you don't want any more children, why do you have it? So if a woman comes in there complaining of fibroids or endometriosis, they're going to be like, oh, well, you don't want any more kids, or you're this certain age. Well, let's just go on ahead and do a hysterectomy. Let's just go. They try to scare you and tell you that, you keeping it in past a certain point is going to increase your risk for cancer, and which can be true. But sometimes, doctors kind of get lazy and they like to stick with the status quo instead of comprehensively working with your patient to come up with a plan. Not just going, oh, this is it. This is the only option. And basically you're dumb or you're stupid if you don't go with this option because I'm a doctor and I've had all this training and da 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 da. And that's not right, because my body is my body. And I don't care if I don't want any more kids. Having a hysterectomy is a very, very major surgery, so it's just, we start off kind of at a disadvantage when we go to our doctors anyway, because when you have, and there's not to say that there's not any good male OBGYNs or that there's not any bad female OBGYNs, but it's just when people are out of touch and they don't know how your body feels or your attachment, to your organs, they can be a little bit cold and not really thinking about how the patient feels. So what people don't realize is that the uterus is more than just the place where a baby grows. It's way bigger than that. It plays a very big role in hormone regulation, sexual satisfaction, because if you think about it, women who have had hysterectomies usually have trouble enjoying sex afterwards because their tissues have gotten thinner. They've lost their hormones. They're drier down there. So it really affects a lot of things. And it also affects bowel and bladder function. So really, your uterus should not be removed unless it is absolutely necessary. And so when you think about it, when you think about the uterus, you think about your ovaries, all the organs that are, in your pelvic area. Anytime you have any issues with those, that correlates to your second chakra, which is the sacral chakra. All right. Sacral chakra has to do with money, sex, and power, just to keep it real simple. So the way that your internal organs feel, like whether they're healthy or not, really correlates to how the woman feels. Does she feel safe? Does she feel stable? Is she able to express herself creatively, sexually? Is she in a good relationship? Is she in a good job? All right. So if any of those things are off, if they're unhealthy, if you're in a stressful relationship, if you feel like you have a loss of control, all these can lead to unhealthy pelvic organs and pelvic diseases. So it's funny in this book, and I'm going to be reading certain excerpts out of this book also, so I can make sure that I give you the correct information. So it says that when a woman's innermost needs for companionship, sexual and or creative expression, and emotional support are in competition with her outer needs for success, autonomy, and approval, this situation may manifest in her inner pelvic organs. And which is so, I don't know if I want to say sad, but it's just really eye-opening, because when you think about it, like in our world and our culture, we're always told that we can't have it all. If you're a career woman, if you're focused on your career, then you're not going to have a husband or kids because that you don't want to take the time to do that. Or if you are married and have kids, then you can't focus on your career. They don't preach to us that we can balance in doing all these things. It's like we have to pick one or the other. So really, it puts us in a bind because it's like we have to choose. Do we want to be successful in our career, or do we want to have a successful home life with a husband and kids, picket fence, or wife, whatever? Or do we want these things? It's like we can't have both of it. So it puts us in a constant, kind of state of stress, So what really resonated with me is that in the book, it shared an example of a woman who started to develop fibroids when she was going through a divorce. And so there's another example in here that shows that classic psychological patterns associated with physical problems in the pelvis is that of a woman who wants to break free from limiting behaviors in her relationships, which could be with a spouse or with a job. And so she wants to break free from the limiting behaviors, but she's scared about being by herself. And which is so true, because I feel like as a woman, we all, for the most part, have been through that before. So this sets up a major conflict within, the woman about her own fears. And so there was a patient of hers that had developed a fibroid in an ovarian cyst when she was 40. So, like I said, this OBGYN, she looks at things from an energetic and spiritual aspect also. So she asked the patient, basically, are you able to be creative? Like, do you have a creative outlet? And the patient told her that she wanted to leave her corporate job and become a florist, and that she'd always loved flowers, but that her parents always discouraged her from pursuing it because they considered it frivolous. But instead that she needed to go to school and learn skills. So she ended up becoming an executive secretary, but the work was not satisfying to her. She only stayed at her job because it provided her with steady income, good benefits, and security. And she was afraid of leaving that and risking not making it out on her own. So as her 40th birthday approached, she felt the need to pursue her passion and her dream of working with flowers. And she kept having recurrent dreams about flowers. So finally, she was able to follow her dream and fulfill her creative expression. And then her ovarian cyst and her uterus started to heal, which is amazing. And it just goes to show that everything is not just so surface or physical, or you need to change your diet, you need to exercise, Like, yeah, those things can help, but it's more of a comprehensive approach. Energetically, what is our body trying to tell us? So that's what I had to figure out. So for me, I dealt with infidelity. And, with infidelity, it brings up a lot of negative emotions of not feeling good about yourself, about feeling insecure. You don't feel stable. You don't feel safe. Not only that, but I felt guilty because I stayed in my relationship. I felt like maybe that meant I was weak, or that I was being foolish. I was being too trusting. So I felt guilty and kind of upset at myself as a woman for staying in a relationship. In that relationship, I was also overworked. I had a stressful job. I didn't have time to spend regularly with my kids. I didn't have time to spend with myself. And I definitely didn't have any creative outlets at all. I would work, come home, cook, clean, do the dishes, do the laundry, go to bed. That was my life 5 days a week. And so the other 2 days that's left over, you're tired. you're tired and you're trying to squeeze everything in. It's like you got to pick between resting or do you want to get out the house and try to have fun or something. So it's like you just feel like you can't win. And also when I was a child, I felt like I was never encouraged really to be artsy or creative. I was always just labeled the bookworm. Like I was always in a book. I always was reading. I always was writing, but it wasn't for fun, So, and then it was the same thing for me. Is my parents told me, all right, you need to go to school, you need to get a degree, and so that you'll be able to take care of yourself, financially. You won't have no worries. You don't need to depend on anybody. You'll be taken care of, which is all well and good. But like I said, the creative side was not emphasized, so it kind of put me at a disadvantage later in life that I'm just now, figuring out. So all these issues that I had going on was the perfect storm to have fibroids, because I never had any issues at all with my periods or anything until, recently. And so once I started doing the research and seeing it, I'm like, oh my God, like this all, makes so much sense. And then also, if you refer back to episode 4 here on my podcast, I talked about, tapping into our femininity and how Black women are disadvantaged and don't have the privilege of being more feminine or being more vulnerable. So when you think about it, that's exactly why Black women have a higher incidence in fibroids than white women do. And it all ties in together. Like I said, if you're a single parent, which there are a lot of single parents who are Black women. So just think, if you're a single parent, you're working all the time, probably not at a great paying job. And I know this is not everybody's situation, but this is very common in our community. You're working, you're just trying to survive. Normally, you're just trying to make ends meet, right? So you don't have time to think about self-care. You don't have time to think about, journaling or meditating. Like, you are literally surviving. You're trying to make sure that your kids are eating, that your lights are on, your water is running, and you got gas in your car. All right. That's what you're worried. That's what you're focused on. You don't have time to be creative and draw and paint or, create music or anything, because you're too busy trying to fulfill your basic physiological needs. So just think, if it's years and years and years of you doing that, you think that there's not going to be some type of disease or illness that builds up in your body? Okay. It is. And that's why, now that is a reason that I can jive with when it comes to why Black women have a higher incidence of fibroids. It is our environment, in that we've not been bred or raised to appreciate being creative or appreciate taking time for ourselves. We were groomed to be strong. We're groomed to be strong Black women who are independent and don't need a man for nothing and can take care of herself and pay her own bills, which is all well and good, but it closes us off from accepting help. And it keeps us at a constant level of stress in our bodies, which is so unhealthy. So I'm like, all right, that makes sense. Like, I can rock with that, and then, like I said, that explained me to the T, to a degree, even though, I wasn't, a single mother, but I felt by myself in my relationship because I was going through so many issues and I was mad at myself. I was, like I said, I felt guilty for staying, and I just felt like, I need to do, like, it was like, to an extent, like it was my fault. And not saying that the infidelity was my fault, but me staying and going through so many issues and being stressed out and working too much. Like, I felt like that was something that, I needed to fix. So also touching in on the pelvic area, the book also mentioned how our relationships with our mothers and our children, if we have them, profoundly affect the health of the pelvic area. And she, her friend is a physical therapist named Tammy. And Tammy was working right after the Boston Marathon bombing, and she had a patient that arrived that had a friend who had run in the marathon that day, and they did not hear from that person, so they didn't know if that person was okay or not. So the patient, her pelvic floor, like the pelvic muscles, registered this as a profound trauma and weakness. So literally the bottom fell out of her pelvic floor. Like, it created a weakness in the muscle because of the trauma and the fear and the dread. So it was like a direct link to causing weakness in her pelvic floor. And there was also another story in the book of a lady that lost her younger brother, who she was very, very close to. And 6 months after he died, she began having symptoms of uterine prolapse, which is, again, weakness in the pelvic floor muscles. And she felt literally like the bottom was falling out of her life. And in actuality, it literally was falling out of her uterus. So because she had this loss and she was grieving. So once she understood what was happening and how the trauma and the grief was linked to that, she was able to reverse the situation and started working with a physical therapist who understood the pelvic area, or the pelvic bowl, as it's referred to in this book. And so this physical therapist, Tammy, she also went on to say that she has learned that when trauma happens, the stress registers in the root chakra and can be felt in physical symptoms. Last episode, we kind of touched on the root chakra, which is the first chakra, which is your basic need for safety and security. And that if your first chakra is thrown off, it throws an imbalance through the rest of your chakras. So, of course, the root chakra is right near the sacral chakra. So they're very closely related, like when it comes to women's health issues. And so she had some patients that she was seeing right after 9/11 happened. And she said that they had these trauma imprints. She said they had multiple trigger points in their muscles, their pelvic muscles, a lot of tension, and just their energy was just off. And even though none of them had anybody directly related to them that was involved in the attacks, but just knowing what happened and having seen like all the things on the news, being a part of the collective trauma registered still in their body, in their pelvic areas. So it's just, I just think it's so amazing, because to me, this is empowering, because this is giving us information to know that we can actually work on reversing these things by ourselves. You know, because when we have to go to a doctor and explain to them our symptoms, it's kind of like we are putting our lives in their hands. But knowing that you can find like an energetic reason behind a lot of very common illnesses and diseases is just very empowering. And so Tammy goes on to say that though our female bodies record trauma events, we can change the way we hold the trauma imprint so that it includes the medicine of healing. In this way, we heal ourselves and resource ourselves for the future. So it all comes down to doing the work and doing our healing, because once we do that, you know, we're setting our bodies free. We're removing this heavy energy. We're removing this dis-ease out of our bodies and getting healthier. So I just wanted to go back and reiterate this paragraph in this book, just to, you know, once again, just explain the energetic relationship with the uterus to our bodies. And it just says the uterus is related energetically to a woman's innermost sense of self in her inner world. It is symbolic of her dreams and the cells to which she would like to give birth. Its state of health reflects her inner emotional reality and her belief in herself at the deepest level. The health of the uterus is at risk if a woman doesn't believe in herself, is excessively self-critical, or is putting too much of her energy into a dead-end job or relationship. Okay, that is a whole word. Okay, a whole word. And like I said, I could check every item off the list is what I was going through. when I developed my fibroids. And it's also a section on endometriosis also, which I think is good because usually they run hand in hand. It's a lot of women that have both at the same time. And it's the same. Endometriosis energetically is the same as fibroids. It's related to blocked pelvic energy. And energetically, endometriosis is an illness of competition, she says. Says it comes about when a woman's emotional needs are competing with her functioning in the outside world. Says when a woman feels that her innermost emotional needs are in direct conflict with what the world is demanding of her, endometriosis is one of the ways in which her body tries to draw her attention to the problem. So that goes back again of our patriarchal society telling us women that we have to pick what we want. Do we want to be successful in business, or do we want to have a successful marriage and successful having children? We can't have both. The world does not promote to us that we can have both. We have to choose. And so this causes a conflict within us because we know that that's not right. And that's really a little sidebar, but this is really why I started this channel, because I want us as Black women to know that we can have it all. Everybody's been telling us that our whole lives. Society does. Our parents do, our grandparents do, because they weren't able to fathom or have the privilege of dreaming or living like that. But that's one of the generational curses that I'm breaking, that I am currently in the process of breaking. I can have it all. Why not? Why do I have to pick and choose? That doesn't make any sense. It's just like the saying, you can't have your cake and eat it too. What's the point of having a damn cake if I can't eat it? I don't want a cake if I can't eat it. I think that's like the dumbest saying. Like when you really stop and think about it, like it's so stupid. If you have cake, you're supposed to eat it and enjoy it. And that's what I plan on doing in my life. I plan on having all the cake and eating it all and enjoying it. So that's what we have to start, changing our mindsets. Stop limiting ourselves. And that's the whole purpose of my whole brand, my podcast, my journals, my cards, anything, even like the posts that I make on social media. It's all about stopping the limiting beliefs and knowing that we can have what we want and that nobody can stop us. We're the only person that's able to stop us. Okay. All right. Now off my soapbox. So when it came down to my fibroids, as I mentioned earlier, I took the pills. I didn't like how they affected me because they made my periods light, but they made them very long. So I just stopped taking them. Then I just kind of was waiting. I was kind of telling myself, oh, well, the first couple of days are rough, but, I can make it. But I finally just was over it. And so I spoke to my doctor and we decided on having a uterine ablation and a DNC. I had that done in the middle of April, and I am happy to say that I've not had any bleeding since. So it was successful. It doesn't affect my hormones, so that's awesome. And yeah, I've just been a lot more comfortable. So I feel like it has been a success. But not only did I do those actual physical treatments, but I began working on me as a woman, as Alyssa Michelle Clement Amerson. And that's what I did because for a while, I just identified myself as my roles. I identified myself as a wife. I identified myself as a mother, as a nurse. But I never identified as just me as who I am, just as I exist. I did not identify myself that. So I had to start finding myself. And not only finding myself, but appreciating and loving myself. I had to express myself because I had been stifled for so long. Growing up, my ideas weren't my ideas for a very long time. Because if you go back to the spirituality versus religion episode, I explained my background and how I was brought up. And a lot of choices were made for me. So I had to break out of that mold. I had to learn how to set boundaries within my relationship and my marriage. Work. I don't work anymore, which is a great privilege. And I'm very happy, to be able, to do that. And I know not everyone can do that, but my circumstances have lined up to the point that now I'm able to be at home. So I decreased my workload. I don't have a stressful job anymore. I've become more creative. I never knew that I was creative, but I started making custom tumblers, and I got to use all kind of different kinds of paints and glitter and coming up with designs, and actually told myself, you actually are very creative. And now I've created my manifestation journals all by myself. I've created oracle cards all by myself. So I'm actually very creative, and I regularly do these things so that I don't feel like I'm being burdened. And I want to say probably the number one thing that I did that really shifted the momentum was forgiving myself for staying in my relationship, in my marriage, after going through infidelity. And that was something that I really, really struggled with, because it's so embarrassing, like when other people know things that you don't, or when people want to, use your partner's infidelity as a weapon against you. I didn't do shit. So like, why are you coming at me? So not only, but to have outside people, coming at me, and I'm like, I didn't do anything. I wasn't the one that cheated. So the fact that I stayed, even though I went through all of the mess, it really like made me feel bad, because I'm just like, girl, why are you still here? But as time has gone on, I've forgiven myself, because I know me, and I know, and my relationship is way better now, like as far as like communication and trying to understand each other better, but I just had to learn that like I have to be happy with me, and anything that's not for me, whether it's a friendship, a relationship, a marriage, whatever, if it's not for me, it's going to fall off. So I just had to forgive myself, because I did what I had to do. I really focused on my kids more than anything. But once I learned how to make myself happy, then it really didn't matter what he did, really, because I did not make him my source of happiness anymore. I didn't have that. I broke the codependent relationship that we had. And so once you do that, that kind of takes the power away from the other person. So that's all I had to do, is I had to build myself up and build my strength up. So I had to forgive myself for staying. And that was it. Because like I said, I coped and dealt with things how I knew how to cope and deal with them. And I also have the knowledge and the strength to know that if the shit not going to work out, I know what to do. I'm not being naive or foolish, but I know what to do. And I can say at the end of the day that if my marriage or my relationship did not work out, that I put forth 110% effort, like at all times, to make sure that was right. But if it doesn't work out, it might be sad for a little bit, but I've come so far. So what is there, to be upset about, in a sense? So that was probably the biggest, the way that I got the biggest breakthrough was telling myself, girl, you did what you had to do. Forgive yourself and move forward. And I actually worked on having a better relationship instead of holding on to resentment and anger and fear and insecurity. I had to work through those and get rid of them, and work on actually having a better relationship and not being afraid to be vulnerable in my own home, because I felt like I had to keep a wall up for so long, which again goes back into that affects your body physically when you feel like you have to hold walls up or look a certain way on the outside and not actually be in touch with your feelings and actually say like, you really hurt me. Because as I said in the last episode, it's easy to cut somebody out. It's easy to be angry at somebody all the time, but it's hard to cry or to say you hurt me to my core, because it's really hard, because you feel weak, but it's so much strength in doing that and expressing it, getting it out of your body and making it known. And you just feel so much lighter and so much happier, so all in all, my pelvic area is very healthy these days, so everything is working out. Everything is, going in my favor. So I do want to share some more tips about what you can do if you're going through these issues, if you're having, fibroids, endometriosis, anything like that. I'll share some tips with you on what we can do to try to get you and your body in a better place. So the first one is pay attention to your body and your symptoms. As I've been saying this whole time, energy imbalances and blockages are manifested by your physical symptoms. So now anytime like I feel sick, I have a pain somewhere or some type of discomfort, I ask myself and I ask my body, what are you trying to tell me? What am I missing? Now, of course, if it's an emergency, I'm going to the hospital. I'm going to call my doctor. Okay. That's just being realistic. But if it's something kind of vague or, or like I said, maybe it's a headache at a certain side and it has a certain quality to it, I ask myself, okay, what are you trying to tell me? And then I do my research. I reference the book or I go online and try to find spiritual or energetic reasons why this may be happening, which leads into step number 2 is to be balanced and be realistic about certain illnesses and conditions. There are a lot of spiritual people in the world who are all natural, all plants, all essential oils, and they will try to shame you if you want to use Western medicine. And that's not right, because we have to realize that everybody's bodies are different and they react to things differently. So no one should be giving hardcore advice to anyone about what they should or should not be doing with their bodies. It's inappropriate and it's very dangerous. You should not be doing that. Now, if you break your bone and it's popping out your leg looking real bad, ain't no plant, essential oil, or crystal gonna fix that. So you need to take your ass to the hospital, okay? So it's like, you got to be realistic about certain things. Like, you need to know when you need to go see a doctor or some type of practitioner, or when you can be able to assess it at home and see what you need to do. So don't let anybody shame you from the spiritual community about if you want to take a Tylenol or whatever. Like, it's up to you. It's about autonomy. It's about you making the decisions that you want to make for your body. So don't let anybody, sway you one way or another. It's one thing to present information. It's another thing to shame somebody into making a decision that may not be the best for them. So you can do Western medicine to take care of the initial problem, just like I did with my fibroids. I was bleeding. Okay, even though I was exercising more, I was eating better, I was still heavily bleeding. So I had an ablation done to stop that. And then once the initial problem was fixed, now I use spirituality and I use spiritual medicine and meditation and whatnot to maintain and improve my pelvic health. Because I still have the fibroids. The ablation does not remove the fibroids. It removes the lining that's responsible for your monthly menstruation. So I still have the fibroids. So I still have to do spiritual maintenance to make sure that I keep them in check, because it is, you are able to shrink your fibroids. So I do what I need to do which is exercising. I make sure I get plenty of my vegetables and fruits in. I drink plenty of water. And I just do things that I enjoy. I'm creative. I'm chilling, which is all good, overall for improving my health. So just keep that in mind. Just be balanced and don't let anybody sway you either way 100%. Do what you need to do. And that leads to number 3, which is be your own advocate. Nobody knows your body better than you. People can be educated, go to school for a long, long time, and know anatomy and physiology, but they do not know your body and your condition and your environment. We live in a patriarchal society ran by men. Okay. A lot of medicine training is based off of this patriarchal, the way life in the United States. I can only talk about the United States. I can't speak about anywhere else. But, and like I said, I'm a nurse, and even going through school, like some of the things that you learn they just don't make any sense because they're old and outdated to an extent, and they only look at one viewpoint. They don't look at the whole body, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. They don't look at all of that. So a lot of doctors, like I said, they're going to try to convince you to get a hysterectomy. Okay. And especially if you're a Black woman. Okay. Which is so strange. But, people need to realize that racism in healthcare is very real. Okay. Some of the treatments that they offer white people, they are not going to offer to other races, especially Black people. It's the truth. Okay. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is fact. Okay. We read it in the headlines all the time. There have been so many Black maternal deaths in the 21st century. And it's crazy because there's no excuse for it. And once you start, boiling down and reading the articles and looking back, it's because the nurses and the doctors did not listen to these Black patients when they told them that something was wrong. And that's what led to their deaths, because they were not taken seriously. So not only as a woman, but as a Black woman, you have to fight to be heard and to be taken seriously. So be your own advocate. Do not let these doctors tell you that one thing is the golden standard and that's all. That's the only option you have. You never just have one option. Okay, get second, third, and fourth opinions until you find one that aligns with you and what your body needs. All right, because there is a disproportionate rate of hysterectomies that are performed in Black women over white women. Matter of fact, let me tell you, I'm going to flip to this page and I'm going to tell you what the percentage is. Let's see here. All right. It says, all right, the rate of hysterectomy varies by region of the country, with the South having the highest overall rate and the Northeast the lowest. All right, let's take that sentence. So, okay, more hysterectomies are performed in the South region of the United States. Okay, where there's a lot of Black women. Okay, the least amount is performed in the Northeast, predominantly white. Okay, and this is coming straight from the book. This has nothing to do with me. This is not coming from any pro-Black literature. This is coming from this book by this white female doctor. Okay. And then it also says hysterectomy historically has been performed more commonly on African American women than on Caucasian women, and more frequently by male gynecologists than by female gynecologists. Why? Why? Like, that is scary. The disparities in healthcare are really, really scary. That hysterectomy is a very major surgery with very major risk. And I have spoken to people, I have listened to stories before on hysterectomies, and there are women that are my age or younger. I'm 33 and younger, who the first line of treatment the doctors is offering is a hysterectomy. That's scary. So why are y'all offering this to Black women so often and performing these surgeries on Black women so much more than you are white women? This is why you have to be your own advocate, because the doctor can't force you to have a hysterectomy. So that means that these women are agreeing to have this performed probably because they're scared. They've probably been made to feel like this is the only option that makes sense. And if you don't do it, then you're uneducated, and I'm more educated than you, and I'm telling you what you need to do. And some people have a fear of doctors, like they fear their authority. So you have to be educated and be your own advocate. And you need to come into your appointments prepared, have your information, your evidence, and show them that you know your options and you know what can be done. And if they're not able to offer you any other options, then you need to find another physician, okay? Don't let these doctors bully you into getting a major surgery that can have a lot of complications, okay? Weigh your options, take your time, don't rush. Unless it's life-threatening, hemorrhaging, take your time. Unless it's that, take your time to figure out what your next steps are, okay? Luckily, I have a wonderful OBGYN who has never rushed me into any procedures. She gave me my options. We talked about the pros and the cons. Like, we sat and talked about these things during my appointment. And, I don't know if it's because she knows that I am a nurse or not, but either way, we took our time before I came to the decision to have the ablation done. Okay. Step number 4, spiritually speaking, we need to examine our lives and relationships. As I said before, if you feel unsafe, you feel unsupportive, insecure, these all will manifest into physical symptoms of pelvic illnesses and conditions. So it's very important to evaluate these things and really get honest with yourself and then come up with a game plan to remedy these issues that you may be having. So, like I said, you ask yourself these questions. Are you holding on to trauma, trapped emotions? Do you feel shame? Do you need to forgive yourself? Do you feel like you're trapped in a job that you don't love? Do you feel trapped in a dead relationship? Like, these are things that you really need to, take heed of, take note, and then figure out how you're going to fix it. All right. So, I always talk about meditation basically in every episode. You need to meditate, get in touch with yourself, be honest with yourself, figure out what you need to do, how you need to fix it. And that's what I did. I had to get in touch with myself. Journal, write these things down. A good activity that Natalie taught me was to just write without picking your pen up off the paper. So basically you're writing without thinking. And this is helpful because it's basically you're just writing out the first thing that's in your head and you're not thinking about it. Like, you're literally just writing down like what is coming to your mind. So journal. And sometimes, journaling is easier than talking to other people because it's a pen and a paper and you don't have to worry about nobody telling your business when you journal. So journaling, I do it every day, multiple times a day. I have 20 million journals around this house, and that really is what really has saved me and really helped me find myself again, and which leads into doing the inner work. You've got to do the inner work. Inner child work is especially important because issues with our second chakra, the sacral chakra, really, like I said, comes down to money, sex, and power. But it also is related to our relationships with our mothers. So we may need to do some inner child work and some reparenting to ourselves to get over some of the issues that are causing us to have dysfunction in our pelvic area. Stop numbing how you feel. Like I said before, it's easy to be angry and lash out and cuss people out. It's harder to be authentic and be vulnerable and say and articulate how you feel when someone hurts you. And that's what you have to do. Stop numbing it with drugs, pills, alcohol, food, trying to stay busy so that you can't think about what's going on. Stop. You need to feel it. It sucks at first, but once you get in those feelings, get mad, cry, get it out your system, and then work on doing what you need to do. See how we need to fix it, okay? But stop suppressing your emotions because it literally can kill you. It causes a lot of disease and dysfunction in your body. Stop suppressing how you feel. Be creative, draw, paint, dance around the house, play some music. Like I said, all my episodes all tie in together. It's all coming back to the same thing of just taking time for you, appreciate you, do what makes you feel good. Act like a kid sometimes. Just Act like you don't have a care in the world. I don't care if you got, 10 emails you need to respond to or whatever. Like, just stop and be present for a few minutes and just laugh. Like, put a comedy on. Do something silly. Like, be childlike in a good way, like in playfulness, to just stop focusing on all the burdens and the problems sometimes. It's hard, I know, but it's very essential, and just try. It feels silly as hell at first, but just try and just be playful. Intentionally set aside time for you. We will always tell ourselves we don't have time. We don't have time. We don't have time. All right. We got 24 hours in a day. I know you got to work a certain amount of time. I know you got to sleep certain amount of time. You can carve out 15 to 30 minutes for yourself every day. You just need to figure out how to do it. But you have 15 to 30 minutes to carve out for yourself. I don't care how busy you are. Okay. You're going to have to stop, overbooking yourself. Stop being so busy, because it's going to cause you problems in the end. Schedule it. Put it on your calendar. Set it for a certain amount of time every day, so that you have intentionally said, I am taking this time for me. You're not leaving it up to chance, because if you do that, you're going to find something else to do, or you're going to forget to do it, and it's not going to happen. So be intentional with what you do. All right. And then once you've meditated, once you've, started doing some inner work, getting you towards healing and whatnot, once you've assessed the situation, now is the action part. What are we going to do? What are we going to change? Okay. I feel like sometimes we don't give ourselves enough credit. We don't give ourselves enough power. If you're in a job that you don't like, you can find another one. Okay? You can find another one. I know it's scary. It's fear that stops us from finding it, because just like the example I read about earlier, you're safe and secure because you know this job. Even though it sucks, you know how much you're going to get paid, you know where you're going to get paid, and you know what the work involves. So you stay there, but you're not stuck. We make ourselves stuck. Okay. So change that job, leave that relationship. If you feel like there's no progress being made, if you're constantly depressed, sad, not yourself, as hard as it is, it may be time for you to leave, or maybe a time for a separation, so that you can take the time to work on yourself. So now that I've said that, I know it's going to be somebody be like, well, how am I going to do that? You didn't leave, so why I got to leave? Or how am I going to change my job? I got bills to pay. I got kids to feed. Let me tell you something. You can change whatever you want to change. Okay. You can't base your decisions off what I do. Just like I can't base my decisions off of what you do or anybody else does. You got to do what's best for you. All right. You have to know in your mind, like I said before, you can have it all. You can have whatever you want. You can live your dream life. You can have your dream job. You can make money easily, be financially abundant, and still have time for yourself. But you gotta believe that. You gotta pray about it, and you gotta manifest it, or however you want to say it. All right. But you have to be intentional and make a plan, pray about it, and then let God or the universe take care of it. But if you feel hopeless and you feel like you're never going to be able to find a job that you're going to make a certain amount of money and be happy and have a sense of freedom, then you never will. You got to change your mindset. All right. You got to start learning, like I said, to know that you can have the best. You can have it all. It all starts in your mind. Stop limiting yourself to always having to overwork yourself. Life is not just about working hard all the time and not enjoying. That doesn't even make any sense. And like I said, I know that these have been values that have been, given to us over generation after generation, but we're changing that. We're not about to work ourselves to death all the time and not get to enjoy the fruits of our labor. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Like I said, it's all about having the cake and eating it too. Stop wanting to suffer all the time. Sometimes that suffering is built in us because that's all we've been told. That's all we've been taught, is that you got to get it out the mud. All right. Like it doesn't mean as much if you didn't struggle to get there. Like, everybody got a story for the most part of the struggle. I definitely have a story of the struggle. I'm still not where, I want to be at ultimately, but I've come a long, long way. All right. Financially, I've come a long way. Emotionally, I've come a long way. Spiritually, I've come a long way. So I've made a lot of advances in my life. So stop thinking that everything has to be hard. Stop thinking we got to suffer before we get something good. Just know that you deserve to have good. It is your right to live a great, easy, abundant life. Keep telling yourself that. Even if it's hard, keep telling yourself that every day. And know that you're in charge of your life. You're in charge of the decisions you make. You literally have the power in your hands. Stop giving your power away to other people or to inanimate beings. And I'm not saying that you can't rely on or pray to God or pray to universe or whoever your higher being of choice is. But sometimes we give our power away and don't take responsibility for what we need to take responsibility for. You can pray, but you got to work too. You got to put in your part. All right. Faith without works is dead. So if you pray or you're manifesting something, you got to put some work towards the steps of getting to that. All right. You gotta put some effort towards it. But just know everything does not have to be hard. We got to unlearn this as a community and as a culture. We have to stop thinking that everything has to be hard. Okay. No. And then, like I said, work on forgiving yourself. If you stayed in that bad relationship or in that bad job that you hate, forgive yourself, because you know what? You got to do what you got to do at that time to make it and to survive. So move on, learn from it. Every bad situation has a lesson out of it. So learn from it, take notes, and move forward unapologetically. Okay, that's what you got to do. It's hard, but you got to move forward, because being stuck in the past, you're never going to make it forward. So leave it be. Even if you got to write it down, write a letter to yourself, forgiving yourself, and burn it outside. And it's gone. It's done. We're not looking at that no more. All right. I'm going to link the book information in the show notes. I got my book off of Amazon. I want to say maybe it was $15. I can't remember, but it's on Amazon. But I'll put the title in there so you can look it up if you are interested in purchasing this book. I'm not affiliated with it. I don't get any money from it. It's just a book that was recommended to me. And so I'm paying the knowledge forward and letting you know about it, so that if you want to purchase it, you can. But it's a very good book. Also wanted to do a shameless plug for myself. I just published a 369 manifestation journal, and I also published these daily oracle advice cards. They are beautiful, 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 beautiful. I'm so excited to share these with y'all. They will be available very soon. Sometime, I will say before the end of this month, they will be live and ready for purchase. So I will be keeping you all posted on the podcast. Also on my social media, I will post updates as far as when they are available and ready for you all to snatch up. But I really been trying to make my brand like a whole vibe. Okay, so I make the podcast. So I'm not only making a podcast and sharing information with y'all, like I'm actually making items that are going to help you do what you need to do to live your best life. So I'm excited. And like I said, I will keep you all posted on when those are available for purchase. All right. So that is it for today. This is a little bit longer of an episode than usual, but it's so much good information. And so please listen to the whole episode to get, everything out of it, so that you can understand that we have so much power within ourselves. We can change the narrative. We can change, we don't have to live in the same story as our parents, as our grandparents, or as our younger selves. We can change the narrative. We can change the story. We can be whoever we want to be. Okay. So I just hope that you all are encouraged and empowered when you listen to my episodes. If you have any show ideas or any questions, please forward those to me. My social media and email information will be in the show notes. So if there's a topic that you think I should discuss, let me know. I will be more than happy to take a look at it. But I hope you all have a great day. Thank you for hanging out with me. And as always, remember to be love, light, but also be with the shits when necessary. Bye.